Welcome back. We are here with Cece Stinson, and we're talking about colorism. And before we went on break, we shared about the idea that we have to be able to be aware that there are two sides to it, and we have to be open to just loving on each other. I think that's so important that we just be really open to conversation and really loving on each other and trying to understand on both sides of this coin what is happening to us and what is happening to each other. So let me ask you, one of the other things that my sister and I discussed was um, what people are calling light skin privilege.
Mm.
And you touched a little bit on this, but one of the things I said to my sister, I said to her, so you don't really feel that you've had any light skin privilege? And she said, no. She said, I don't feel like I have. She said, now, the one thing about privilege is many times you don't recognize it because that's what privilege is. You don't always recognize, but in your experience, do you feel that you have had privileges or possibly been in spaces that deeply melanated where you haven't seen deeply melanated people or felt or seem to feel like you did have an advantage?
Yes, I'm going to say that mainly because now I have researched the topic and I do understand why I was more accepted into areas where I saw no other person of color,
Mm,
none. And
wow.
especially working in the technology field, more often there
Mm,
were not a lot of women to begin with, and especially not a lot of people of color when I started out in the field. And I truly um, have the understanding that the reason for me being included or quote unquote accepted is is because that, like, I mentioned before, I grew up in Baltimore. Then I actually because of the taunting and the bullying, it was so severe that my family got together and felt that it would be better for me to live with my sister, who was in the military, than to stay in
mm,
Baltimore. I did go to a private school for elementary, but I wanted to go with all of my friends to middle school, and that's when it everything just got so much worse.
yeah.
For me. So after that, my sister was in the military, and I got to go to high school over in Germany, which felt so free for me at the time. Now, the European nations do have an issue, do have racism. I just
Right.
want to note that. It's just been going on a lot longer
Right.
than here in the U.S. So it's deeper, and yes, it is there. But for the most part, being able to live in a culture where you're not so much seen as black, but you're seen as American, help me to listen to a variety of different music. I have
Mm.
a broad scope of friends that I actually still keep in touch with in Germany, Italia, Spain.
Oh, wow.
Um, yeah, so it enabled me to have a global sense of coming back to America. And I came back to America and I landed in Texas. Texas, yes, the
Mm.
deep south. So, being able to live in a European country, date outside your race, and not have
Mhm.
as much propaganda just stating that you're a second class citizen, know your place, and I hope we can start talking about that too as well.
Yes.
And to be afforded the opportunities to speak up and to obtain as much knowledge as I wanted to without feeling awkward or just
Mhm.
so different from everyone else. Now that changed when I came to Texas. It was readily demonstrated in so many ways that for me as a young black woman, the nose of the South.
Right,
So you
right.
weren't today outside your race. I've had I've been told I should write about these experiences, but it just
Yes.
brings up it still traumatizes me to today,
Wow.
the things that people did or spoke to me when I arrived to I went to school in Denton, Texas, and my girlfriend was with me, uh, Dr. Warren, who was actually in our clubhouse talk. Uh, we were in the grocery store, and a elderly white woman came up to me and just held my hand and just smiled and told me that I was so pretty for a colored girl. This was in the grocery store. Yeah. Um, so more and more experiences like that
Yeah.
happen to me, and I'm glad my girlfriend was a witness to it, that made me know that I would be only allowed to obtain a certain level in this society. But because of my fair skin, I honestly feel that it wasn't, people say it was a privilege that I was accepted into certain arenas that other people were not.
Mm.
But I definitely feel, because I was educated, because I did know a lot about my history, because my family told me
Right,
about my history.
right.
I'm in these circles with individuals that claim to have no racial biases, but yet their tonality in their speech and talking
Mm.
to me,
Right.
the Southern know of being able to look directly into someone's eyes, that was actually written in a performance review for me. That I'm a very confident woman because I I look the CEOs, the senior VPs. I was not deterred by a title
Right.
whatsoever. I would always say, "Well, I'm da da da." Yes, and I'm Cece Stinson. How are you doing? There's no division
Right.
for me. So being able to do that, and then it was also written in a performance review about how well I spoke. And I don't know if I'm going to tell this story on camera. It was so long ago, but I actually remember being in the conference room with my manager, and seeing what he wrote on my performance review, that I was so articulate. And then to go on and have the conversation about how well I speak in meetings, that my capability of leading meetings, it was just, it was just, he truly did not realize, until seeing my facial expressions, the
Mm,
it was drenched in racism. I got so angry. I balled up the piece of paper, threw it in the room, left, and I went straight to HR. So, in those circumstances, I truly do not feel that it was a privilege. Um, to me, sometimes it feels more of a curse to be not only be ostracized from a dominant culture where you have the one drop rule,
yes.
to segregate you, um, from wanting the notion that you're not human, and then to also be ostracized from, I feel, my people, because of something that I had no control over. I had no control over my looks whatsoever. And
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
But and I think too, we don't understand because we don't understand where it all comes from. And
yeah,
because we don't understand that we're being controlled by the media. That's who is really controlling us. And one of the things that when I interviewed my uncle, and he said, whoever controls the media is who controls the mind. And
yes,
I thought that was so profound because we've been so controlled by the media and everyone outside of our community, Hollywood and television and Vogue and all these people dictating to us what's beautiful.
yes,
We have allowed them to tell us what is beautiful, what is valuable, what is worthy. And for so many of us, it doesn't look like us. And
correct,
so it becomes an issue of looking at those who are lighter skinned and feeling like because that's what the media has told us, these are the beautiful people, these are the valuable people, these are the worthy people, so then we begin to resent and begin to hold our own. I'm going to speak on a woman thing right now, that we hold our own sisters hostage to these things the media has told us, and because we have not had the conversations that we need to have to begin to be able to work through our hurt and our pain and
yes,
our trauma, because that's what this does.
yes,
It brings about hurt and trauma, and we don't realize how traumatic some of our experiences have been, and we don't talk about them. Many times we don't talk about it in our families.
correct,
And one of the things that I have been very, very, very vocal about is getting to a place where we no longer allow it to happen in our families. And and I say to people with all due respect, you got to tell grandma, we don't talk like that anymore. We don't call these names. We just, Grandma, I love you, and I have the utmost respect for you, but we don't use blackie anymore. We don't call these children redbone. We don't call them mulatto. We don't call them half breeds. We don't call them darky. We don't do that anymore. And we've got to, even with our own families, begin to call it out. We
Yes.
have to do it because this hurt and this trauma that we're carrying, and we're not talking about it. And so it just spills over into all of our interactions. And I tell the story about um, this a friend of mine who I met, and um, she's very, very fair. And as a matter of fact, she has an incredible story because she talks about how she lived for like 7 years as a white girl.
Mm.
And we were at this event, and she came in the room. She was a little late, and she came in, and so automatically my deeply melanated hurt and pain started to surface. I'm like, oh god, here we go. I'm like, here we go, here she come. You know? And she sat down in the seat. I was kind of sitting on the side of the table. There was a seat empty at the head of the table. She sat down in the seat, and she had had a day. And she said, I cannot even believe I made it. And I said, breathe, sister. You're good. You're okay. Just breathe. And we
Yeah.
had a wonderful conversation. But immediately, because of my past experience, I decided who she was without having a conversation. And that's something we, as women, as black women, have got to stop doing that. We have got to stop labeling each other based on what we think we see.
Yes. Yes. I remember having this conversation with my girlfriend, which sparked us to do the documentary issue of colorism, where she said, "Oh, okay, so you're the equivalent of what I would feel towards someone who's blonde." I said, "Oh, I never thought that. Does
Mm.
that happen? I guess so." And she was like, "Yeah. So if you see like a tall, blonde, like Heidi Klum,
Mm.
woman coming to the, nightclub, she she said, 'Yeah, I know it's all over for me.'" I was like, "Wow, okay."
Hmm.
Um, I think we definitely need to have a focus in the documentary, and that's really what sparked it, about having getting women to have self confidence in themselves, and to
Yes.
not rely on what men desire or want,
Right.
because that is perpetuated by the media.
Yes, it is.
They are putting the images up there of of their what they feel are their desires from what they see growing up.
Right.
So that's why, yeah, but that's a whole nother conversation. But
Yeah.
I do know in the African American community, we did have to sit down and to talk about, especially seeing the leading men in Hollywood, because I did research on this. Why is it that Wesley Snipes always has a fair skinned woman? Is it driven by the producers, by the financiers, by the overarching media? Because when you're putting together films, you also put together, or it coincides with how you're going to market it from inception. That just based on the
Right.
log line, the story. How are you going to spin it and be able to sell this to the masses? So I found out that a lot of the times the leading men, because you're banking on it, men still dominate Hollywood.
Right.
Um, they're asked who would they like as their leading woman for casting purposes.
Mm,
And this information is given to the casting directors. And so I also used to be an actress as well, with the headshots, the resume, going on auditions.
right.
And when you get the notices, it would it would actually say European looking African American female, or Euro looking, fair skin. We actually, when I say we, I mean in the acting community, really had to campaign against this terminology, because it wasn't only with African Americans, Hispanics.
Mm,
All you have to do is just look at the commercials and see who is represented by the ad agencies, which are also predominantly white.
right. Right. And I read an article not too long ago how Vanessa Bell Calloway
Mm.
was saying that she went for the lead in Coming to America, the first one. And she said that she believes that she was not chosen because her skin was too dark. And Eddie Murphy, she believed that Eddie Murphy had a say on that. He had a say on
Well,
who
I
was
shouldn't put my
supposed to
head down.
be the lead in the character, and they chose the other actress who was lighter.
Correct.
Yeah.
So once again, we're discussing and talking about, oh yes, the Hollywood is doing this, or the media is doing that, but then we have to take ownership and accountability
Yes.
for continuing the cycle. And how do we negate that?
Well, one of the things I think that, and we can talk about this more when we come back from the break, but one of the things I think is that we have to begin to, I want to say this the right way. We have to begin to start teaching our young men and our boys about the overall beauty of all black women. Because I think when we have black men making these decisions, and again, they're making it based on, and we talked about the In the Heights issue. They're making these decisions based on what I believe Hollywood has told them that this is what people want to see. And they aren't standing up for, okay, but this is what my community really is. This is the scope of my community, and this is what I believe that my community deserves to see. So, because I mean, when you look at Eddie Murphy, even in his personal life,
Yes.
you know, that's what the women look like in his
Yes.
personal life. And so when you start looking at some of these black men and who the women are that they're with in their own personal lives, because again of that whole idea of the closer you are to white, the more beautiful you are, and this is what they want to have. These are the women they want to have on their arms. But if we don't get to a point where we are educating our boys as well as our girls on the scope of the beauty of the black woman, that all of us are beautiful, and it doesn't have to be an issue of you always have to, that you can only choose light skin to or white to increase your value on the marketplace. Because I think that a lot of black boys and a lot of black men still feel that having a white woman, or having, and I'm not speaking against interracial relationships, because who you fall in love with is who you fall in love with. But at the same time, I think we have to be mindful of, is this really the person, is that always who you're just seeking? Is that who you're always just going after, and you have decided that you don't want this group of people? We talk about that. We did a show on preference in regard to
Mm.
colorism.
Yes.
And, preference is discrimination. So if you are excluding an entire group of people because you say that's not your preference, then you have to kind of start looking at, well, why is it that you're excluding an entire group of women that look a certain way? You have to kind of look deep inside as to exactly why you're doing that.
Exactly, exactly. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
and that's truly what we're seeing on the screen. So it's not just black men. We saw it with Lynn Manuel Miranda in
Yeah,
the Heights,
right,
um,
right.
but also throughout Hollywood. So the leading men, they choose for their leading ladies what they desire, what they feel will get them ahead. So having a beautiful wife, trophy wife, beside you increases their value. And we're talking about when you're going to functions, when you're networking.
Right.
This is why a lot of men go for beauty queens, because they're like, hey, you, that's what, all right, I want
Uh-huh.
to talk to you.
Yeah.
Let's maybe do business, or it's a opening to a conversation piece. But what attributes are you saying that are beautiful?
Right.
How
Right.
did how did that get so skewed?
Right.
Especially when we're talking about our hair, which now
That's a whole
we're
nother show. That hair thing, that's a whole nother show. Black women and their hair, man. Oh my God.
but it really doesn't. And I'm just going back to what me working in corporate America, and even
Mm,
having the my black men and co-workers um, tell me that I would get further by doing a blowout. So basically, straightening your
yeah.
hair and putting it into a more conformist hairstyle that
Hmm.
fit into the Fortune 500 or even Fortune 50 companies, in
Hmm.
order for me to get ahead. That's why now we're needing the Crown Act to stop that.
Yes.
And say how
Yes.
I wear my hair should not affect my social status, and should not
Right.
affect me being able to move up the corporate ladder or in any office. Truly, being able to
Right.
show your natural hair should not be a negative point. But
No.
it still happens to today. When I blow out my hair, I cannot tell you just the comments that I get from all races on, that's how you should wear your hair all the time. It's so beautiful. It's so, oh, you can, it blows with the wind. Like, oh my goodness, no, no,
Yeah.
no. I love my girl Beyonce, but I don't need to have a little Beyonce fan blowing everywhere.
Right. Right. We'll be right back after this.
Wonderfully made, the color of beautiful, beautiful. God made me beautiful. Yeah, I am so beautiful. I am so beautiful. When you look at me,
dark and lovely with a glowy skin. Definitely you are credit to the whole black race. What a strong black woman with a beautiful face. Yeah, I'm loving the way you believe in yourself and how you keep on going till you make it all by yourself. Yeah, your kindness misunderstood for weakness. Your silence is gold to me, I'm speechless. I love the way your black woman control your frustrations. They never believe in hate or divisions. A black woman ever willing to take a chance to make it work even when she don't understand. She's black, she's beautiful and proud about it. She's one of a kind, no doubt about it. The beauty of a black woman, yeah. Beauty of a black woman, yeah.